of us. So we'll smile. So ready, 3, 2, 1. All right, here we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Inning Intermissions. We call this the virtual bucket. I'm in one place up in here in Washington State. I have a very special guest. You want to introduce yourself and tell us where you're at?
Yeah, Troy, my name's Scott Linebrink. I am just north of Austin, Texas, and really fired up to be on this show.
Scott, I appreciate you being on. And one thing we have in common is a love for the diamond. So let's start there. Talk about your baseball journey. I know it's a long one, which is super awesome and impressive, but just kind of share your journey in baseball from start to finish with us.
Yeah, well, I played baseball my whole life, and I really thought that my baseball career would have ended my freshman year in high school because I got cut from the team. Through a series of circumstances, I was able to play, played high school, and then walked on at a small D3 college. And from there, I felt like I was already experiencing icing on the cake. But again, through some well-timed circumstances, I was able to transfer to a D1 college, and then that ended up in me getting some national exposure. Got drafted, started my pro career, ended up making it all the way up to the big leagues, and played there for 12 seasons. So yeah, it's kind of a Cinderella story, underdog story. But yeah, I mean, I've learned so much about myself, about my faith, and just grateful for that whole experience.
That's an incredible journey. Let's back up. You said you transferred to Division One, gave you more exposure, which led to you getting drafted. Was there a point where you knew, like, I have a shot, or did you always believe it, or were you just kind of playing until someone told you to stop playing?
You kind of, you hear things and scouts are showing up at games. And so, there's always the opportunity that's there. But when it comes down to it, I mean, even the day of the draft, I mean, I had heard everything from you could be a first rounder to, well, we don't know if we've got room, or a lot of it just depends on what organizations need. A lot depends on what's available in the draft pool. So, you're really excited about what could be on that day, draft day. I still remember I said, I don't want to be anywhere near the phone. I just want to go out and have fun with my buddies. We went out and played golf. This was back before cell phones. So at the turn, I called back to my house and just, asked if there was any updates. And everybody's screaming in the background. They're like, you're probably the last person to know that you got drafted in the second round by the San Francisco Giants. And at that point, like it was, a huge weight off, and a lot of celebrating. And of course, that was just the first step because there's so many things in baseball, as you know, that you got to work your way up through the minor leagues and then you might get that chance. And for me, I was a guy that, got called up to the big leagues pretty early, but then got sent down and I went back and forth like 10 times, had some injuries in there. So, a lot of performance issues and just things that, really had a large part in my journey with Jesus too.
That's incredible, man. Talk to us about the roles you played. Were you primarily a starter early on? Did you morph into a reliever? What was that like?
Yeah, I was a starter. And then because of the injuries, they decided to put me in the bullpen just to limit my innings. And that's really where I found my niche because I was a guy that liked to show up every day and play. I didn't like the 4 days in between starts. If you don't have a good start, you got to wait for the next one to come around. I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I really feel like I experienced the perfect situation or a role that was suited to my personality, which was a late inning reliever coming in and some of the chaos situations, bases loaded, game on the line, and that's what I did basically for 12 years out of the bullpen.
I gotta ask the question. Did you have a song you came out to when you came out of that bully, or no?
So that was like getting into the beginning of the walkout song.
Yeah.
And I never had one. It was funny
Okay.
when I was in San Diego, they made this whole video and it was based off the movie Jaws, which was appropriate for being right on the ocean. And so they would play this video when I would come in and they played that one uh, quote in there that the fisherman turns and he said, "You're going to need a bigger boat." And they show this big shark coming out of the water. So that was like the media team's own creation. But the only time I ever chose a walkout song was when I was with the Braves. And I figured since I was in Atlanta, hey, let's go with a Dukes of Hazzard theme song. So it was Waylon Jennings, The Good Old Boys.
There you go, man. Let's go. I love it. Okay, so you talked about 12 years in the big leagues. That is quite the accomplishment. That's a dream come true. Can you talk about what was one of your favorite stops, one of your favorite moments, organizations, relationship you may have had?
Well, it was a real treat to get to play for the Houston Astros. I'm from Austin, grew up rooting for the Astros. So, going back to Texas and playing for the team I rooted for, walking into that clubhouse and seeing Craig Biggio and Jeff Bagwell, guys that I rooted for when I grew up, that was a real thrill for me. San Diego was probably the team that I most identified with just because I spent the most time there. That was 5 years. And we had some pretty good teams on those teams. Won the West Division a couple of times. I'm going to skip around a little bit, but Chicago was another place that we spent significant time. Played for the White Sox, not the team that everybody loves in Chicago, but that was fun and big market, like Chicago. But then, getting to go back and finish my career with two teams, the Braves and the Cardinals, that I had a lot of experience facing, but again, teams that I grew up watching and, rooted for guys like Ozzie Smith and Mark McGuire and, some of these guys that I'm now on the same field with. That was just a real treat. And, places that we visited too, like getting a pitch at Fenway Park. And if you're going to ask my favorite, I really liked Seattle. Seattle was where, since you're a Seattle guy, there was just something about Safeco Field that felt very safe to me. It's a great pitcher's park,
It
but I
is.
just
Yeah.
I love being on that mound and love the atmosphere, love the water. So Seattle was probably one of my favorite places to go.
All right. Toughest batter you pitched against. Who was that guy that stepped in the box throughout your career where you just shook your head like, oh boy, here we go?
Hands down, Barry Bonds. I mean,
Come
that
on, man.
guy's incredible. I mean, he did things in the game that nobody else was doing. I mean, he was a standalone. There were series that we would play him where we literally would not give him a pitch to hit.
Yep.
And there was only a few situations where I actually got to pitch to him because, that was the one guy that you didn't want to beat you. But, just his approach to the game. And I actually got drafted by the Giants. So I played with Barry for about 10 minutes. But to see, how he would stand right on top of the plate and choke up, and he
Hmm.
could cover the outside and the inside. He had tremendous eye for the zone, quick bat. He was a guy that could change the game with one swing. So, and he did often. So, and I will say that he did hit a home run off me too.
Hey, that is nothing to be ashamed about. That's just cool to be able to say. I would love to be able to say Barry Bonds hit 100 home runs off me.
It was a
Uh,
big one too.
oh, I bet, man. Yeah, he was probably one of my favorite, besides Griffey, one of my favorite players growing up. Still to this day. So awesome. All right, is there a moment in the big leagues, maybe even before the big leagues, that you remember most? Was it an at bat that you were pitching in a certain scenario in a game? Was it a specific game, playoff game, or whatever? What was that moment that you remember most when you think back to all the pitches that you threw in your career?
Wow. Yeah, there's several. One of the moments that was really sweet for me was coming back to Houston as a visiting player. Now I was with the Padres and coming in. I essentially got released by Houston. It didn't happen exactly that way, but essentially they said we don't have room for you. I ended up getting claimed off waivers by the Padres. So being able to come back and pitch against that team, and that particular game, I came in with the bases loaded and nobody out, which is like the ultimate test for a reliever,
Yes.
and ended up getting 3 strikeouts to get out of the game. And I just remember, coming off that field about as fired up as you could be.
Man, that's the best feeling. That's so cool. All right, let's talk about pitching. Okay, let's transition. That's a perfect transition. So, what about what did you love most about being a pitcher, no matter what level you're at? What did you love about it? What kept you going?
Yeah, so the pitcher is really like the quarterback. I mean, the tempo of the game is really set by the pitcher. Nothing happens until you let go of the ball. And I remember Greg Maddox telling me, this is before the pitch clock when you could take all the time you wanted. But he said when you feel the intensity and the energy ramp up, in a certain situation, when you're on the mound, take a step off, take your time, make a plan. Know that nothing happens until you throw that pitch. Don't worry about how you're going to get this guy out and the next guy out. Just worry about this pitch. And so that really helped me in just focusing on that. But I love that part of the game. I loved the intensity of the competition. all of the preparation that it takes to get to that point, and then it's over in just a few minutes, which in some cases can be a little bit nerve wracking. But really, I learned to trick myself and just say, a lot of times I came in, it was already a mess, and so it's like, hey, this is already a mess. Like, I could do a lot to make it worse, or just see what happens. Make this pitch, see if we can get a ground ball, and not try to be perfect out there, but just try to execute pitches as best I can.
That's some great advice for every level of pitching right there, no matter what level you're at. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, let's talk about the life of a bullpen pitcher. Can you talk a little bit about the culture of the bullpen, the superstitions? I know there's a lot of fun stuff that happens throughout the game. One of my favorites is when the bench is clear, the bullpen comes
Oh,
sprinting out, right?
that's
Can
a
you talk?
long run.
Yeah, it is a long run for a lot of pushing or just yelling, right? Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about maybe some of the fun games you guys played or superstitions that you had just over the years?
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, that's like a culture in and of itself down there. And so, we're down there with a coach. Usually the coach is a former player too. So it's kind of like we get a chance to do whatever we want down there. Which, you still have to be ready to come in the game. But the thing I appreciated about a lot of guys that were really good down in the bullpen is they knew how to switch it on and off like that. So we could be sit there, bantering about something. And I mean, we would go to discussions on politics or would you rather scenarios or whatever the case may be. But then when you saw the game start to move in a certain direction, you knew, all right, I got to lock it in. And some of the guys like Trevor Hoffman could do that as good as anybody. So I learned a lot from that. But yeah, I mean, the shenanigans, for sure. I mean, when you're baking away in a Texas day game and it's you're up by 12 or down by 12, and there's really nothing that you're going to do to impact the game. It turns into just a lot of relaxing and fun. So a lot of different extremes in terms of intensity down there. But at the end of the day, it was a cool culture. Love the camaraderie that happened between those guys. Oftentimes, when we got to a new city, we would do a bullpen dinner where just the bullpen guys would go out to eat. And so it did a lot to just build that camaraderie within us.
That's awesome. All right, I can talk to you for hours about your baseball journey, but there's so much more I want to get to because you are more than just the diamond. And so you had mentioned it earlier in one of your responses. You talked about your foundation being in your faith. Can you share a little bit about just your faith journey, how Jesus fit into that, and how that kind of just helped be the compass to your life?
Well, I was raised in a Christian home. I had a good foundation set for me by my parents. I went to private schools all the way up until middle school, and then I got into public education. But I would say I had a good understanding of faith. In large part, it was an inherited faith that I just assumed I was a Christian because I came from a Christian home. Now, fast forward when I went off to college and first got into pro ball, there were things that I did that were outside of what I was raised to do and behave. And I think, like any young man who maybe is not rooted in faith, I think there's a lot of distractions and temptations that we can fall prey to. What I experienced for a couple of years was the carnal lifestyle of having a foot in the world and a foot in chapel or the church. And I really got to a place where I knew I wasn't living the way I should be. Very much like what Paul talks about in Romans. The things that I wanted to do, I didn't do. The way that I wanted to behave, I didn't behave, and I'm caught in this constant tension. And so, I think it was at that time that I really started taking a hard look at what do I really believe, and if I believe that, why doesn't my life reflect that? And so I went through a process, and a lot of this, was around things I was learning about myself in the game. And I realized that I was very much in line with the performance-based thinking. Hey, if I do my job, I'll get rewarded. And I think I came at faith that same way. If I do things for God, if I behave, if I do all these things, then God will love me. God will bless me. But really, it was in reverse order. What I needed to come to the realization is that, number one, I am a child of God, that He calls me by name, that Jesus, because of His death on the cross, has saved me and given me the grace and the hope and the future promise that He's assured me. And so I start there, and then from that I live. And so obedience and all of the things that people see as part of the Christian life, that is an outpouring of what we believe first. It's not that I obey to get God's approval, because I can never obey enough. But I just love Jesus first, and then I let all of that pour out from me, and that's something that I continue to learn more and more each day.
That's so good, Scott. Man, I love that perspective. I love that it was a journey, right? One of my
Still
challenges
is.
whenever I get, that's right, whenever I challenge people or I have a chance to have a platform, I always share, hey, the moment's important, but the everyday is just as important, the relationship, right? And that's what's so cool. So I appreciate that. All right, I want to transition to now how you're using different platforms to do what we just talked through. You're using your story, the journey of your story, and the foundation of your story to now shine a light out to the world in creative ways. A couple of those ways, one of them is the shirt that you're wearing through Sports
Yeah.
Spectrum. Can you give a shout out to Sports Spectrum and just talk about your podcast and what you're doing in that lane?
Yeah, Sports Spectrum is where faith and sports connect. It is a media platform, and if you go to sportspectrum.com, you'll see a ton of things that are available to anybody out there. Daily devotions, video testimonies from different pro players all around the world. We do have a podcast network. I lead one of those called Get in the Game, but I also appear from time to time on the main Sports Spectrum podcast. But basically, we just want to. There's so many athletes today that have a solid faith and understand that their platform is not about who they are on the field of play. It's not about the fame, the glory, the money, but it's, how have I been given a unique opportunity to share what I truly believe with the rest of the world? And the fact of the matter is, there's a lot of people that consume sports that are listening to athletes. And so Sports Spectrum really gives them the platform to do just that. And we have seen some amazing things for God's kingdom, just by people being able to listen to stories from some of their favorite players. And I'm a storyteller. I love telling stories. And man, if we had a couple of hours, we would talk all kind of baseball stories. But I have taken an opportunity here recently to write down my story. And so I've got a book that'll probably publish this fall, and it's called Fields of Life. And basically it's the story that God has written in my life and my personal experiences on three different fields. One of them, as you can guess, is the baseball field. After baseball, I got very involved in international missions, and I'm still involved with that. And so the mission field is the second field. And kind of the overarching field to all of this is something that you may not know about me. I'm an olive farmer, and I planted 8,000 olive trees here at my home in Texas. And that really came about after I went on a trip to Israel after my baseball career ended. And the olives blessed me because they reminded me of timeless truths and truths that I saw play out in those other fields too. And so I kind of use these simple agricultural stories and analogies, much like when Jesus told his parables. He talked a lot about farming and raising plants. And so I just wanted to use that to open up stories from all three of these fields, and just invite people into these experiences that I had, and talk about some lessons that I've learned, and hopefully it inspires people and points them to Jesus, and maybe even encourages them to write their own story, because I think we all have a story to tell.
Man, I love that. That last line is my heartbeat right there. We do have a story to tell, right? So thank you for sharing that. And when your book does get released and there's ways to pre-order, we will push it. We will do all the fun stuff to get it out there for you. So thank you. Thank you for writing it. A lot of people, I always say everybody has a book in them. Will they take the time to write it, right? So well done.
Well,
What?
that actually
Yeah,
came as a result of sitting in a room with a
yeah.
publisher that I didn't realize was a publisher,
Okay.
and we got to talking, and I was telling him about this story, and I said, "Yeah, I kind of had this idea for a book in my mind." And after I finished talking about it, he said, "I'm going to help you write that book." And at
That's
first, I thought,
awesome.
"Oh no!" I went and opened my big fat mouth. But man, it has been such a rewarding experience, and just helped me again frame, the uniqueness of these experiences and how God timed them so succinctly, and all of it was leading back to Him.
That's incredible. All right, let's talk about another lane that you're involved in that you shared with me earlier off camera, and that's your involvement with FCA. Can you talk a little bit about your involvement with FCA, why you choose to partner with this organization, and maybe just kind of why others should maybe think about the same thing?
Yeah, my first experience with FCA actually came when I was a student in high school. Admittedly, I'll say that I went to this Bible study only because the varsity baseball coach led the study. And so I wanted to get in good with him because I wanted to make the varsity baseball team. But that probably, started my journey or planted a seed. As I transitioned out of professional baseball, I saw what was going on around me in schools here locally. And I wanted to. I was invited to attend a meeting, and I've been serving on the board of our local FCA board here in Williamson County for now 15 years or more. Um, One of our board members said it best that FCA is meant to keep Christ in schools, and I think it is, probably the last battleground that we have in public schools, and just the ability to raise up coaches and leaders and trainers who can pour into these kids. And you look at the opportunities that coaches have to impact a life of a kid. They're probably more than a parent at certain points of their life. And so I just love that ministry. I love what's going on here locally. I love what's going on in FCA around the country, and like Pro Athletes Outreach, which I'm involved with. Pro Athletes Outreach is a ministry just to pro athletes. FCA is to the college and high school athlete. So I think there's again room for discipleship within sports.
I love it, man. Thank you for sharing that. You've been through a lot of adversity in your journey, whether it be through pitching or whether it be through post retirement. What do we do next, to just the everyday grind of life? Can you share a lesson that maybe you learned through your story that you could pass on to the next generation on how best to handle obstacles, adversity, however you want to say it?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question, Troy. Because I think that suffering and persecution, whatever you want to call it, bumps in the road, adversity, all of this is an opportunity. And so when those things come, because they will come, I mean, the Bible says in this world you will have trouble. So we know that that's promised. But what God wants to do with those is redeem them so that he can grow your faith. And I think back to all of the things that I went through, whether it be an injury, whether it be a trade, at a wrong time of my life, or my career ending abruptly. All of those things were meant to show me that there's something bigger than this happening here. And we can all get pretty introspective and caught up in our 3-foot world of thinking it's all about me and the things that are immediately happening. There's so many other things out there. What I have seen from suffering in my life is that it has equipped me to minister to other people who might be going through a similar thing. And so just that idea of compassion, and being able to build relationships based on pain and hurt. There's wonderful opportunities to speak into people's lives when they really come to the end of themselves, and when they say, hey, I need help. I don't know what to do here. I'm lost. I'm at the end of my rope. Man, those are times when God's can use the same situation you might have been in just recently and say, I'm with you. I understand what it's like to be in your shoes. And let me tell you about the hope I found through that suffering.
That's so good. I appreciate you sharing that. I have a lot of young athletes who watch these podcasts, and so I want to give you an opportunity. You've played at the highest level. You've had Hall of Fame teammates. You've pitched against Hall of Famers. You've done everything that a lot of baseball players at a young age dream to accomplish someday. Can you share some advice you have for them in their own journey that you learned along the way?
Wow. Well, I would say that God's never through with you, regardless of whether or not you're meant to be, a Hall of Fame baseball player, or pick your sport, or if this is just something that's teaching you something at the moment that's going to help you prepare for something else. Every step in my journey I saw as something that prepared me for the next. And so it's never about getting to this point and saying, okay, I've made it. Because there's always something else, and something that's happening here, whether it be success or failure, is preparing you to take that next step. And it may be a step that you never even imagined. I mean, I never would have thought, one, that I would have played professional baseball, but two, that I would have gotten into a decades long career in international missions and traveled the world. I never would have guessed I would have write a book about all of this either. So I think all of this is just showing me that, there's things in my life that God's using to prepare me for what's coming next. And it's always about looking forward, looking to the end. There's a wonderful book out there called Living Life Backwards, and it's based on the story of Ecclesiastes. And, if we start with the end in mind and say, where do we want to go? Where do we want to end up? Well, all of us, if you're a person of faith, you want to hear the words, well done, good and faithful servant. And so if that's our goal, then how do we work backwards from there?
That is so good, man. I'm gonna have to read that book. I've not heard that book. I'm gonna put it on my list right when we get done because I'm a book nerd, like I said. So thanks for sharing that wisdom. All right, last question for you, and you're off the bucket, the virtual bucket. Okay, this picture behind me of this guy on a bike. That's my pops. He's 80. He's my hero. I am who I am today in a large part because of how he raised me, and most importantly, he introduced me to Jesus. And so I call him my favorite guide. Who are some guides you've had in your journey, and what did they teach you to get you to where you are now?
Man, well, I'm with you. My dad was one of my early guides. My dad was my coach. My dad was a great father who set an example for what it looks like to follow Jesus. He was a guy that I leaned on throughout my career to go back to and ask questions. He's still very active in my life, and I ask him questions all the time. So agree that those guides are so important. I like to think of guides in terms of, people that might be at the same place you are, or they may be a little bit ahead of you, or they may be a little bit behind you. And so having the mix of all of those is so important. But, I think of, other players in my career, like Lance Berkman, who really challenged me, led Bible study, really, confronted me with some tough questions that ultimately led to my journey back to Jesus. I think of chaplains like Tim Cash and Doug Sutherland, who were chaplains for teams. Some of these guys would actually come on the road with me and stay in my hotel room, accountability partners. They challenge me in the way that I think about my faith. And even now to this day, I mean, I've got guys that I work with that are great examples to me. The CEO of our organization is Steve Stenstrom, who's a former football player. Steve's a great example of a guy that did it well and continues to run his race. And so, all of these guys are men that I look to, of faith, and men that continue to pursue Jesus, and they're great examples for me.
That's awesome, Scott. Well, hey, man, I just want to say thank you once again for taking the time. But before we get off, I do want to just share some encouraging words. Just as I've gotten to know you virtually, I just want to say thank you for doing what I feel like we're all called to do, and that's take the platform of our lives, whether we're a professional baseball player or we're a street sweeper, and use it to glorify Jesus and to shine our light for others. And I know our journeys aren't perfect. I know yours wasn't perfect, but you stayed tight to Jesus throughout it. And because of that, you have impacted now many people. And so I just want to thank you for that and challenge the audience to find your one thing to do that. What is your platform to go shine your light for Jesus? So thank you, Scott, for everything you're doing. I'm so pumped for the book release. So we will promote that the closer that that gets. Appreciate you being on today.
Yeah, Troy, I just wanted to reiterate what you just said with a life verse, and it's Psalm 115. And it says, not to us, O Lord, not to us, but to you be the glory for your steadfast love and faithfulness. And you're right. That's what it's all about. It's not about us. It's about the one who gave us life. And so thank you for making that statement and for encouraging everyone to think in the same way.
Well, amen to all that. And I will see you soon virtually, or maybe someday, hopefully in person.
Thanks, Troy.